Okay, we're going to be learning a Maamar. It's really a hemshech. It's connected to another Maamar, the Maamar that was said throughout Shavuos. It's actually a Maamar Parshas Nasai, connected to Shavuos, but it's a short Maamar, and there's a lot going on this week, so this is what we have available to learn. So the pasuk says like this. It's obviously the beginning of the Ten Commandments. Vayidaber Elokim is called Laymore. Very similar to the pasuk that we just learned in the Torah. On that pasuk, the similar concept in the Maamar that Hashem Elokim spoke all the Kol HaDvarim Eila, all these words Laymore say. And here the Rebbe asked the question as follows: What's the idea of Vayidaber? God spoke, saying. Everywhere else, this statement makes sense. God spoke. Laymore, why did he speak? That Moshe should tell someone else, whether it's Aaron, the Jewish people. The Jewish people hear from Moshe, and Moshe is the only one who hears it from Hashem. So God says, I'm telling you such and such thing, Laymor, to give over to the Jewish people. Therefore, the idea, the wording of Laymor is appropriate when Moshe is being told something privately to tell others. That what I'm telling you now is not a private message. I'm telling it to you now in a private setting, but it's for you to take it, and as Moshe Rabbeinu to give it over to the Jewish people. That's the pashtus. That's the simplicity of it. But when it comes to the Ten Commandments, it's a famous question. You can't say this by the Ten Commandments. Everyone's standing there. So God says, God spoke, it's called HaDvarim Laymor to say. Listen, say to who? Everyone's there. So what's the pasuk adding the addition to the word Laymor in the Ten Commandments? So this is something that's specific to the Ten Commandments, this question. Why? Because the Ten Commandments is the only time God spoke to everyone together. And therefore, so this question is asked many places. If you want to say that it's for the next generations, we know that all the souls were there, even the souls of the converts, etc. So even the Rebbe says, we'll understand this based on what we explained before, meaning in the Maamar of Shavuos of the year Tafshin Chofav 1966. But Maamar Dir Chag HaShavuos, in the Maamar of Shavuos, Maamar Shakoi Kiddush Saad B'Mor Hasham, based on the teachings of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, Shalom Dovber Shneerson, son of the Rebbe Rash, the father Rebbe Friedrich Rebbe, Nishma Sayed in his souls in heaven, Divra Maskell, based on the Maamar that starts with the verse Chaviv in Yisrael, that's special on the Jewish people. That's the Maamar, that's the topic of the Maamar. And when did he say this? In which year? The year Tov Reish Mem Vav, which, if I'm going to go quickly, will be 1886. Shimyusad al Maamar Atzemach Tzedek, that the Maamar that Rebbe Shab said was based on the Maamar of his grandfather. Rebbe Shab is the Rebbetzon's grandfather, means the Rebbe's wife's grandfather, and he said a Maamar in 1886 based on the Maamar of his own grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, which incidentally was also the Rebbe's great-great-grandfather. And on that also is a Maamar of the Friedrich Rebbe. Okay. The verse says Maamar Zal was brought down 8 in Oveis Perikimo, right? That Chaviv in Yisrael, Chaviv in the root of the word is Chaviv. So it's unique or special are the Jewish people, Bnei Yisrael. Shenitlam Kli Chemda, that God gave them his desirable instrument, Shabai Nivra Olam, that God used to create the world, which is a reference to the Torah. Pirush. So what is this? What did it say? There's two explanations to that saying of the Mishnah and Avis, of the fathers. So one is Sha'ayidei HaTorah Nivra Olam, that what's it mean that it's a Kli Chemda, God's unique or special utensil, precious utensil that he created the world. So the explanation is that it's because the Torah was created through the world. The world was created via the Torah, or through using the Torah. God created the world, as our rabbis have taught. Torah says about itself, I was God's umanus. I'm just God's utensil of labor that God used was the Torah. Melech basav dam, just like there's a king of flesh and blood. Shuboine paltrit is and difterois and pinikasais, when he's building his buildings and palaces. Yeshloi, he has special things to use to build it. So too, God looks into the Torah and builds the world. As the saying goes, God looks in the Torah and he creates the world. So you have your blueprints. So too, the Torah is the blueprint of what God created the world with. So that's the idea of Chaviv in Yisrael, that the Jewish people are precious. That God gave them Kli Chemdas, he gave them his pleasure board or unique utensil, tool, that he created the world because God used the Torah to create the world. Well, Pirush Habeis, that's simple, right? Pirush Habeis, the second explanation is Shekol hamechavin rebrisa oilam choya b'shvil haTorah. See, the first statement is that, so to say, there's a blueprint. In the Torah is the hidden codes, the hidden ideas, how God would draw from that, so to say, to create the world. But it doesn't necessarily, in the first statement, tie the dependency of Torah with creation, meaning to say the world is dependent on Torah because God looks into the Torah and creates the world. But you could have blueprints and the world won't get created. Torah could exist without the creation. Here he says the second pirush is Shekol Macham B'Yisraelim is not just that we used, God so to say, used the Torah to create the world, but then there's a disconnect, so to say. But the whole purpose, the idea is the whole purpose of creating of the world was for Torah. That means there's no separate existence of the world that's separate from Torah. Because it's the whole reason why the world is in existence is because of Torah. And that's why it's called Kli Chemda. Why is it a special, unique, precious tool? Because it's the world is all about the Torah. It's whole dependency. It's not just that you need to get the information in order to build it. But the only reason it's there, the world is there, is because the Torah is for the Torah. Maamar zal tino hisna kadosh baruch hu ma'aseh bereshis. God conditioned creation. If the Jewish people are going to keep the Torah mutav good, and if not, then the world doesn't exist. Why? Because the whole purpose of this world is Torah. So there's no purpose of the world outside of Torah. It's not even that the Torah is that the creation of the world comes from Torah. The whole reason the world is because of Torah, is for the people to do the Torah. And if the Jewish people take the Torah on the, like it says, Yom Hashishi, the sixth day of creation is dependent on the sixth day of Sivan. Why? Because if there's no acceptance of the Torah, the world doesn't exist. It doesn't get destroyed. There's no anger involved. There's no punishment involved. It just doesn't exist. Pull the plug. There was a condition to keep the Torah. They don't want to keep the Torah, whatever that means. That's bonakid. You could say there was a choice there. But whatever you want to call that. But if they don't accept it, then you pull the plug. It doesn't exist. It's not happening. It never happened. These are so to say the children, or the outcome of heaven and earth. What does it mean? Eila told the Shemayim Baritz. Eila b'schus mi oimdim b'schus mi mekayimim. What merit does the world stand and exist? B'schus ve'eila shemais b'nei Yisrael. For the fact that there's the Jewish people. Ve'eila b'schus mi b'schus ve'eila eidus v'achutim. And so how does the heaven and the earth is dependent on Torah and the Jewish people? What does it mean that the Torah is created through Kli Chemda? This is it's not so much that it's not arguing, it's just a focus. It's deeper. That this what it means that the world was created through Torah means that the purpose of the world was Torah. The purpose of the Torah was the Jewish people, and through the Jewish people to study Torah. The Rebbe continues in the Maamar, basically the Maamar that was said from the Rebbe Rashab based on the Maamar of the Chassidic. Vayidaber, the Kim is called the Laymore. That's why the verse says, even though all the Jews were standing there, the Elokim spoke all these words, saying, The famous Laymore koi alasar mamoris. Saying means to say that it's not that Moshe is told the Ten Commandments tell the Jewish people. That's obviously not, because the Jewish people were standing there, they heard it. The idea is that the Dvarim ha'elu, these words of the Ten Commandments, give Laymore, give existence to the Asara Mamoris, to the 10 utterances. Asara Mishgal, right? We have the 10 Commandments and the 10 utterances go together. They're on the scale. They scale each other out, meaning that if you can integrate the 10 Commandments with the 10 utterances, then there's an existence. The 10 utterances is the world was created with the 10 utterances, is like we learned in August past week, Perik Chamishi, right, 2 weeks ago. That says, Basara Maris Nevra Oilam, the world was created in 10 utterances, means the existence of the world comes, and like the Rebbe is explained soon from Tanya, keeps in existence from the 10 utterances. But where's there a power of the 10 utterances? The Laymore. Laymore is the same root word as Maamaris, Emor, Laymore, it's all the same word, root word. So the Asar Maamaris, the 10 utterances, are dependent on Vayidaber, the Asaras HaDibros. Dibur and Vayidaber are the same. Dibros and Vayidaber are the same root word. Asara Kaf. This is based on the teaching of the Maggid Mizrich, that Asara, you have the 10 on the scale. The Zohar teaches. And what's this? What are the equal scale? Is the 10 Commandments with the 10 utterances. They're not separate things. They're not just that they're both 10. The 10 utterances are dependent on the 10 Commandments. The 10 utterances correspond to the 10 Commandments. The utterances that keep the world in existence, those utterances, why did God utter those statements? Is because of the 10 Commandments. That the Dvarim ha'elu, which is referring to the 10 Commandments, they are mechazik, they keep in existence, they strengthen. The 10 utterances not just strengthen as opposed to being weak, but if that for the 10 Commandments, there would be no 10 utterances. They would cease to exist. The Rebbe doesn't explain this a little more. We're going to go a short class today. It's Tuesday and a short class tomorrow. Wednesday and possibly finish on Thursday. We still have to understand. Why is it? Means we're saying that why is it called Kli Chemda? Because the Torah is dependent, the world is dependent on accepting of the Torah. And the 10 Commandments the 10 utterances are depending on the 10 Commandments. But why is it like that? What's this dependency? Why is it dependent? Why does the 10 utterances need strength from the 10 Commandments? So to explain the question, the Rebbe is explaining this. I guess that year, maybe it was a leap year, because today we finished. It could be around now also, because we just finished today on Gimel Sivan. We finished the first book of Tanya, and the second book of Tanya is Shar Yichud V'Amunah. So I guess maybe it is that what date is this? Tes Sivan, which is the 6 days from now. We're holding in Shar Yichud V'Amunah the discussion about the strength of the Dvar Hashem, which we're going to see in a second. The Shir Tanya of this day, of today, B'Shar Yichud V'Amunah, which is in the second book of the Tanya, the book of unification and belief. B'Bir Truvas Aminim Shemedamim Ma'isa Hashem Oise Shemayim V'Aretz L'Ma'isa Enish V'Tachbul Oise. Here the Alter Rebbe discusses how the people who try to compare creation to a person who makes something, how they're wrong. Why? So Achtach Maris Eineim Hevdel Godel Shebein Ma'isa Enish V'Tachbul. Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya in Shar Yichud V'Amunah, which evidently is for the portion of the 9th of Sivan, that there's a tremendous difference of when God creates something and how a human creates something. To yesh miyesh, because a human creates something from something. You're not bringing anything into existence. The raw materials for anything you have is there. Now, even if you're going to mix a batter of something that is going to chemicals, that's going to make a plastic and it's become hard, or different alloys that's going to make a metal. You're using things that exist. You're taking things that pre-exist, and even no matter what level of work that has to be applied to it, but from that, those components or chemicals those are all a yesh, and from that yesh becomes another yesh. So from something, it evolves, it continues to evolve, but all from things that already exist. Even if, I mean, in the most simple level, if you have a piece of metal and you make it into a sculpture, or a piece of wood into a sculpture. So surely, right, the tree exists. You're just making a shape into it. But even in something deeper with raw materials and mixes and chemicals and all that, nevertheless, these are all products that exist. L'maisa Shemayim V'aretz. How could you compare that to when God created the world? Shu yesh mi'ayin. Nothing in the world existed. God didn't use, and there was no raw materials that God had to create the world. Nothing. There was no koidim. Nothing. Nothing at all. And anything that comes in the creation was all from part of creation. Creation came from nothing. Even things that today that are created from things, that's only after God created anything. Now the Rebbe says that creating heaven and earth is much greater than splitting the Red Sea. Splitting the Red Sea is only going against the laws of nature. Sea flows, sea runs, water is not going to stand still, not going to divide into 12. And the Jewish people are facing annihilation by the Egyptians. That's, of course, a great miracle. No one's putting it down, but you can't compare the miracle of something that pre-exists, even if it's going against its nature, like the splitting of the Red Sea, to something that never existed before. And but nevertheless, we learn about the splitting the Red Sea, that because it's so against nature, God had to constantly hold a pressure to keep the water separate. Otherwise, the nature of water is to flow. So if God needed to keep the waters standing still, and for a second, so to say, God, lahavdil, let go of that energy that split it, it would flow even more so. Something that doesn't exist needs God's connection constantly. Basically, the Rebbe is discussing over the years that there's a concept that people want to say, Ozav Hashem Esaretz, God forbid, Chas v'Shalom. God created the world, no one's arguing. But he left, like anyone else leaves something, right? If you create something, you don't need the person to be on standby. If you make something, if I build a house, or if I make a sculpture, or I mix a chemical, I don't have to be mixing it the whole time. I don't have to be available. I don't even have to be living anymore. Why? Because I made it and now it's made. Okay, yes, if something was wrong, you could call the number and get service. That's fine. But things that are existing don't need the person who created to be there and keep it existing. So people want to say so too. That's how God created the world. God created the world, Oz of Hashem's hearts. And therefore there is no hashgacha pratis. There's no God's involvement in what's going on in the world. He left it. God forbid. That's what they want to say. So the Alter Rebbe says 1 second. If Kriyas Yamsuf is just splitting the Red Sea, which is going against the nature of creation, God had to hold it the whole time. Something that never exists. It can't exist unless God's keeping it in existence at all time. This is the argument of the second of the Shayich of Emunah. This is the basis of the unification of Hashem, meaning to say that God's strength in creation is constant. So they see what the Rebbe is building to in the question is that if God needs to be in creation constantly, so what's the dependency on the 10 commandments? God anyways has, it's not like God left the creation and the world will disappear if not for the 10 commandments. The whole existence of the world is God's constant attention to the world and life, giving life and keeping it in existence. So what's that have to do with the 10 commandments? If God would have not held up the sea in the splitting of the Red Sea, the waters would fall back down. Maybe more so when you create the world, something from nothing. If God, the creator, takes for a second out the power of creation in the nivra, in the created thing, creation would go back to nothing. There's no such thing as creating something and walking away from it. That only exists from yesh miyesh, not yesh b'yayin. And for more understanding and depth of this concept, of course, is to read the second chapter of Tanya, and there's the great, fantastic 13-petal rose from Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz of Yisrael, that and others that explain the Shayich of the Emunah at length. But the gist of it is what we're saying here. But God has to keep the koyach hapoel, the strength that keeps the world in existence has to be the constant. And what is it that keeps the world going? The 10 utterances are constantly uttering, so to say, if you want to put it that way. It's creation that keeps the base of creation, and therefore anything that comes from the yesh mi-yesh is only because the base is there, and the base is the yesh mi-ayin, something from nothing. Shebehem nidru, l'kfishim about neza. Mashakasav, as the Alter Rebbe himself quotes the verse in Tanya, the verse, the Olim Hashem Dvarach Nitzav B'Shamayim, that God's words, the Baruch, the words of Vayihi Or is always there, because if the second doesn't there is no light. Well, Pirush Baal Shem Tov, and the Holy Baal Shem Tov's explanation, Ki Dvarach Shamayim Hi Rekiya B'Toich HaMayim, that the words that God said that there should be a separation of the waters, there should be the heavens, the water has to always be there. Is constantly keeping the heavens and earth existent. That's not just the heavens and earth, but everything that was created, yesh me'ayin, needs constant creation and existence and kiyum. Everything that it was created, something from nothing, constantly needs to draw from the 10 utterances. And even more so, as explained in the next part of Tanya, the Geras HaKodesh, which is after the Geras HaTshuva, Siman Chav, chapter 9:20. It's not even like an aura from Maamar. The creation has to come from the essence of God, the atzmus, muhus, from the essence and the depth of the Creator to keep the world in creation. Again, based on all this, why do you need the 10 Commandments? God Himself was keeping the world in existence. So why is it dependent on the 10 Commandments? God's existence itself comes from Himself. God is not any effect from any cause, God forbid. Therefore, only God creates something from nothing, something that never existed. Without any cause to the effect of creation, God chooses to create because He has the ability to create something from nothing. So the Rebbe's question is that then why do we need the 10 Commandments to keep the world in existence? Now, the Rebbe is taking it from an actual, not a kavanah set. It means we're going to get to the answer, obviously, but we're taking it from the actual. How is it possible to exist? The world exists seemingly that the 10 Commandments give life to the 10 utterances. But the second, the 10 utterances come directly from God Himself. So why is that not enough? What's the 10 Commandments? Now, of course, we could say that what makes God make these utterances, so to say, is His desire for the 10 Commandments. And what's His motivation for the 10 utterances? That's another question. But does the utterances itself need the 10 Commandments? Seemingly not. It's coming from God Himself. And anything that exists has God itself. So what's the dependency on the 10 Commandments? Nevertheless, we find that the 10 Commandments the 10 utterances does need the 10 Commandments. And the question is, how does that work? We'll be Hashem, pick you up tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.